Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. We're back in the new year 2025, and I'm getting a lot of meetings with clients that want to implement a quality system for their medical device company in 2025. And they want to know, how long does it take, how much does it cost, and what's the first step that we should take to implement this quality system? So a lot of questions to answer in there, and we'll do our best to do it in a short amount of time. But if you have more questions, you can always schedule a meeting with me. Go to medicaldeviceacademy.com/contact-us, so our contact us page, or just click on the header of our Medical Device Academy webpage that says contact us page. So when the people have these quality systems, some people already have a quality system. Maybe it's 9001 ISO certified, but they don't have ISO 1345, which is what medical device companies typically have. The FDA is switching to ISO 1345, and they're incorporating that standard by reference for February 2026. So we have a year to complete that transition over to ISO 1345. Now, if your company already has the quality system that's compliant with the FDA requirements, you don't really have a lot to worry about, because ISO 1345, when they released the 2016 version, they had already made a bunch of changes to make it very close to what the FDA requirements are. So the transition will be very easy for companies that already have a quality system or are already registered with the FDA. But for those companies that don't have ISO 1345, and they don't have a quality system that's currently compliant with medical device requirements, this is what this video is about. So the first thing you need to do is you're going to need to decide, are we just doing business in the US, or are we doing business in other countries as well? It makes a difference. If your company plans on CE marking, you need a notified body to give you certification. If you're doing business in Canada, you need an MDSAP auditing organization. Some companies, some certification bodies actually can do both. So they're both a notified body for Europe, and they're a certification body for Canada for the MDSAP program. If you're going to do business in the UK, then you need one that can issue the UKCA. So there are companies out there that do all of those and ISO 1345, so you can have just one-stop shopping and have one certification body. But that's why it's so important to ask that question first. If you're only doing business in the US, you don't need a CE marking notified body, you don't need UKCA, and you don't need MDSAP. The only advantage of the MDSAP is it would avoid potentially routine inspections by the FDA, but it's probably not worth the extra $30,000 you're going to spend each year to maintain that MDSAP certification. So if you have said, well, we're only going to do business in the US, and let's say you have a quality system that's 9001, but it's not 1345 and it's not FDA compliant, you have some work to do. Not a lot of work, but you do have some work to do. There's actually in the back of the ISO 1345 standard, there is a table that compares those two standards. So that's one way you can look. If you go to that appendix and you look at the comparison between the ISO 9001 standard and the 1345 standard, you can see what differences there are. Now, in the older versions, it was a lot easier because all the clauses lined up. Now, 9001 has 10 clauses and 1345 still has 8. So it's a little bit harder to do that comparison. But that's one of the things we do. We do a gap analysis of your existing quality system with each of the requirements. And if you don't want to pay somebody to do that for you, you could do it very easily yourself. If you visit our website where we have our turnkey quality system, we actually have a downloadable master document list. And part of that master document list includes each of the requirements for each of the procedures in ISO 1345. So you can see, oh, we don't have that procedure and it's required, or oh, we don't have that procedure, but it's not a required procedure. So that's how that table can help you decide whether at least do you have the right procedures that you need. We sell procedures a la carte, so you could fill the gaps. You could write your own procedures to fill the gaps, or maybe you're lucky and you have all the procedures that you already need, except probably the one for medical device reporting. If I looked at what is the most likely thing that every company out there that doesn't already do business in medical devices needs to add? It's probably the medical device reporting procedure. And that's part of 803, which is 21 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 803, instead of 820, which is the quality system requirements. So there are different sections of the regulations that apply to different parts and activities that the companies perform. And if you only look in one place, you won't even know about those requirements. So that's an important piece to keep in mind. But most of the companies, what they want to start with is first, what countries do we want to do business in? Decide whether we want to get certified. It's not required in the US, but it is required in other countries. And then you're going to want to do a gap analysis. What do we have versus what are we required to have? Once you've come up with a gap analysis and you've said, oh, these are the things that we have and these are the things we're missing, then you create a quality plan for how you're going to fill the gaps. And you prioritize it. Keep it very simple. One procedure a week is a good strategy. So if you have 10 gaps, 10 procedures, 10 weeks. Once a week, you revise, update, implement a procedure. At the end of the 10 weeks, all the procedures are implemented. And now you should be implementing those procedures by using the forms, creating records. You should have training for everybody on those procedures. And now you're ready for an internal audit because you have records and you have procedures. Once the internal audit's done, you might have some nonconformities. You might have some areas for improvement. You might have some monitoring of those processes that suggest we still have some weaknesses. Not everything's running perfectly. That's a great time to have a manager review to decide what things we need to improve, what action items are needed, maybe even decide we need a CAPA. Once you've had your manager review, now you've completed all the tasks that are required for implementing your quality system, and you could pursue certification if you want to get that. If you're doing business in other countries like Canada, Europe, UK, it'll be required to go get those certifications. But the sequence has to be done in that order. So you start with which countries, then do a gap analysis, come up with a plan for addressing each of the gaps, implement it slow and steady, one per week. When you're done, you do an internal audit, then a management review, and now you're ready for certification, or you have the entire quality system in place and you're compliant with the FDA requirements. Now, a lot of those clients ask me, well, when should I register? Or when do I have to register? Or when can I register? Depending on whether they need it for an order or they need it so they can import things. You'd like to have everything perfect in your quality system, but do you really need your recall and MDR reporting procedure already in place and already audited before you have any product to sell? No. So you can register and you can have inactive status. You can state you're not distributing product yet. And you could always take the risk. Well, we're going to start shipping the product and we're going to implement this in the next couple of weeks. And it's very unlikely that you're going to get an adverse event, a serious injury or death or a recall in the first couple of weeks of distributing the product. But you're supposed to have your system completely in place before you register, and you are supposed to be ready for an inspection. So there is a risk decision that your senior management's going to have to decide on. You know, is this a class 1 device that is very low risk and nobody's going to get hurt and we're going to implement this over the next couple of weeks? Or is this a high risk device and we really need to have everything done and in place and audited and certified before we even think about shipping any product? It's a risk decision. So are you selling tongue depressors or are you just selling artificial hearts? Very big difference between those two products. And the FDA has controls in place. For example, if you were selling an artificial heart, you'd have a PMA. It would be a pre-market approval. So they would do a pre-approval inspection. So you couldn't even ship a product like that because they wouldn't let you. But if you had a lower risk product like a 510K, you could conceivably have a 510K and not even have a quality system that's completely in place yet. That's not the intent. The intent is for you to implement the quality system in parallel with the development of your device and have it done by the time you're getting your 510K. But that doesn't always happen, and sometimes you have to make some decisions. Are we okay to release this or not? And that is the decision you make in your final design review when you decide to release a product and start shipping it. So if you're doing design controls correctly and doing all your design transfer activities, your entire quality system will be in place. But we see distributors that are shipping things that don't have design controls and don't need design controls because they're just distributing products. They're an initial importer. Lot lower risk. And those companies typically aren't doing the adverse event reporting. They're just getting the information from customers, and then if it might be a complaint, they pass that along to the company that manufactured the device. So get a lot of different types of companies that have different risk profiles and what they would decide in terms of what's an acceptable risk or not. They would have a different perspective and a different answer and a different recommendation based on that risk profile. So I hope that answers some of your questions about how you go about implementing a quality system, what order to do it in, how long it takes. If you have 25, 30 procedures, that could be 25, 30 weeks. And then to do an internal audit and a management review, a few more weeks, maybe even a month. So that gives you a rough idea. It's going to be a 6-month or longer activity to implement this quality system, unless you already have ISO 9001 and just have a few gaps. Now, the cost. On our website, we have a standard turnkey quality system for U.S. use, and we have one for global use. It's $7,000 for the U.S. use, $8,500 for the global system, and it's paid in installments over time. You also have to have an internal audit, so you're going to find an internal auditor for that. Hourly rates for auditors typically range from $150 an hour to as high as $300 an hour. So it depends on the cost or the price that person is charging for their hourly consulting. If you have internal resources, of course, you can write your own procedures, so it'll cost you nothing but time. If you have qualified lead auditors and independents, because you have a large enough auditing team, you could also do that internally for no cost except your time. So in theory, there's no cost except for the certification if you have a large enough company. And the certification, if you're going with Eagle Certification Group, the last time I got a quote from them, it was around $7,000. I'm sure it's a little more now, but gives you an order of magnitude. If you're going for CE marking, to get the ISO certification might be $15,000, $20,000. To actually get the MDR CE mark for a device, that review can be $100,000 or more. And if you're doing MDSAP, that can be $30,000 to $40,000. So it varies depending on the type of certification you're getting and who you're approaching for that certification. If you're doing it all in-house and you don't need certificates, it's really just your time. So, as regulatory people always say, it depends, but it does depend on which decisions you're making. So the larger company you are and the more you can do yourself, the less it will cost. The smaller your company and the more you have to outsource, the more it's going to cost and the less you can do yourself. But if you're just trying to market your products in the US and you don't need those certifications, our website gives you some pretty accurate pricing and estimates for how long that's going to take and how much it's going to cost for your company. So if you have any further questions, you can contact Lindsay Walker or myself, and we can help answer your questions and get you a proposal if you need one. I hope that answers your basic questions about implementing a quality system for this year, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.